Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Heilman, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Behind the Curtain with the Sound on Stage. A few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to see Emojiland, the musical, at Second Story Rep in Redmond. The show runs through July 19th and is directed by Scott Charles Anderson. And if you'd like to see my review of the show, head out to our website. But I'm really not here to talk about that. Today, I'm excited to share that I'm being joined by one of the creators of the musical, book writer and lyricist, along with Keith Harrison Dworkin, Laura Schein. In addition to being a writer and lyricist, Laura is an accomplished actor, starting at the age of 13 in the national tour of Ragtime, and has since performed on stages around the world as well as many appearances on screen. The latest show she has helped co-create is the new musical, Miss Hysteria, and if all of this wasn't enough, Laura is also a certified health coach and co-hosts the functional medical podcast, What the Func. Got to make sure to say that right. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to talk to you about Emojiland and so much of the other stuff. Well, let's start with that, since Emojiland is top of mind. A very unique musical, and there's some great messaging. I've touched on that in my review. And
I love your review, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for that.
It's a super creative way to. I would have never thought to use emojis to sort of provide these life lessons, but given, our use of these new hieroglyphs or whatever you want to call them, it does make sense. So, but let's talk about how it started and how you got involved in it and sort of the creative process.
Yeah. So back in about 2014, Keith and I were wanting to write a musical together, and we didn't know what it should be about, and so we were throwing out all sorts of ideas. And then I remember I remember very specifically, we were out to dinner and we were like, let's just look up what the most searched word on Google is today. Let's just see. And so we looked up and it was emoji. That was the most searched word. And because that was the day that the emoji font, so to speak, had been added to the iPhone.
Oh, okay.
So it was a momentous day for emojis. And there was just a moment that clicked, and we were like, these are characters, so to speak, and maybe there's a musical there, because there's something similar about, like, they say in musicals, when you can no longer speak, you sing. And when you text, it's like, well, when you can no longer express something through text, you send an emoji. It encapsulates everything you're trying to say, perhaps. So we thought there was something there. And I don't know. And as emojis were becoming more ubiquitous, they were becoming sort of these, like almost like an IP, but but no one owns. I mean, Apple owns like their font of the emoji, the alphabet, right. But the alphabet itself is public domain. It's just an alphabet. It's like A through Z. So we started thinking about, we were like, all right, let's do it. Let's dive into this and let's see if there's a musical there. And we went through many iterations of what this musical could be. We actually have 8 full page 1 rewrites of Emojiland. So completely different stories. There's sort of like an Alice in Wonderland version where a human teenager gets sucked into her phone, and she's like being bullied in life, and so she learns all these lessons from the different emojis in her phone. That was one version. There is a version where it's almost like a Romeo and Juliet star-crossed lovers version that takes place fully inside Emojiland, with skull and the smiling face emoji are like star-crossed lovers. There's that version that we did at USC, a reading of. There's a whole, there's an alien planet. It used to not even take place on a phone, the first version. It was like an alien planet where it was this yellow blood is kind of what powered the civilization. I mean, that was like a far out, bizarre version. So anyway, all that to say, there are many versions that actually exist out there of Emojiland. We wrote over 50 songs for the show, many of which have never been heard by people. But as we were writing, what was really unique about the process is that every time there was an update on our phones, new emojis would be introduced into the alphabet. So when we started writing, the character of Nerdface did not exist. There was no face with glasses emoji.
Yeah.
So interesting that ended up sort of becoming one of the protagonists of our story, but that emoji didn't even exist when we started writing. So yeah, and I will say too, when the Emoji movie was announced, we had just finished our first draft of the show, and we were doing a living room read with some friends. And someone texted us and said, "Wait, isn't this your idea?" And two guys had been paid like $1 million for the idea, just the idea. They didn't even have a script. And that was a big turning point moment where we almost threw in the towel. We almost quit because it was like, well, how can we compete with Sony? And like, what if this movie ends up being like an incredible movie, like the Lego Movie or Toy Story, and
Despicable Me or something like that.
Yeah, it's like iconic, and then who wants an Emoji musical? And they'll make a musical out of that movie if it's so great. And we almost gave up. And there was a real moment where it was like very similar to in the show, where Nerdface is kind of like, I can't do it. Nothing matters. That existential crisis moment. And Smythe says, no, deciding what matters is deciding what matters. And like, let's keep making our show because we believe in it and we're trying to say something with it. And so what if there's an Emoji movie? It's okay. That movie ended up getting basically 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know of it or have seen it, but it turned out to be one of the worst reviewed movies of all time. People have a deep hate for that movie as well. And once that movie came out, and we were in a part of the process where this was when we were doing like our reading at USC, we started getting some hate mail through our email address on our website, because they thought that we were making a musical based off of the movie that everyone hated so much. And someone made a YouTube video that had like 5 million subscribers that showed our logo for the musical and was like, this is why I'm excited for World War III, because they thought we were turning this horrible movie into a musical, which we were not. And it's completely different. But it was just an interesting, stumbling block along the way.
Yeah, interesting. Well, what I love is how, and I went into, first of all, the question that I always ask sometimes that I mentioned in my review is, why do things exist? The Emoji movie, I still don't know why, other than it was just, trying to get on the coattails of something that could get kids to watch it. And
it was a cash grab because Spotify, Candy Crush, like there was so much branding that went along with that movie. So, that was partially why.
But what I'm impressed with Emojiland the musical is the depth that you guys wrote into it. I mean, and even if it was just the fact that these emojis it's more than just what's on the surface. Right, because that's our persona online. Our personas online are rarely what they are, inside. What they really, in reality. Just like photographs can lie, right? The same thing here. And that was, I was really impressed with the way you guys wrote that in there, and is sort of, and especially the way social media has taken off and has created kids with these personalities that they've created that can get dangerous. So super impressed with that piece of it, especially.
Thank you. I mean, that was definitely a seed from the beginning, that, that someone's like codal identity would define them, and that we all have we all live within these frameworks that we, sometimes it's hard to break out of them because people see you a certain way. And that's, And for me personally, also the character of Smythe, which, I did play off Broadway, and that character didn't enter the writing process until very late, until our New York Musical Festival production, NYMF, in 2018 is the first time that character was brought into the story, and about this smiling face dealing with depression who sat on the inside. And that also, I really felt very much a connection to that. And being someone who, from a very young age was like a people pleaser and like, I'm always just going to smile through everything. And as I, sort of was working through through my own issues with that, putting that into the role also felt very, very personal.
Yeah. And the realization that everybody's going through something, regardless
Yes.
of what they present. So you came up and saw the second story rep version, correct?
Yeah.
What is it like to see your shows performed at various levels of, various areas, up here? I mean, it's performed all over, but how does that feel to see that on stage?
It's amazing. It's really magical. I did have the fortune of I saw the production. There was a production in San Jose a couple years ago, and a production in Houston in March that I got to go see. And then seeing this version, they're all so different, which is, I think, that's what's so fun for me, is to see the new takes on it. Mm-hmm. And things that there were certain choices that some performers made in the Redmond production that I was like, oh, I have never seen the guard character, just for one example. I've never seen guardsmen done that way with this sort of the operatic voice, and Ryan had a really, really fun take on it. And it was interesting. I was talking to them afterwards, and they were saying that they didn't listen to the cast recording, because there's a cast recording on Spotify from Off-Broadway, and they were like, I didn't want to listen to it before doing this production. And then when they did, finally, after they had already opened, they were like, wow, I'm doing something very different. But I do think that that's really exciting for me to see and hear when people have totally new takes on it. But I mean, this cast in Redmond and the creative team, they are just so fantastic, and they're putting so much heart into it. And I laughed so hard. I cried. I felt all the feels. I went through the whole gamut of emotions. Yeah, it's just a really incredible experience to see it.
It's amazing what they can do in such a small space, and it's so unassuming when you walk into this mall.
Yeah,
you just walk into the front door, you have no idea. And Mark's shows there are just, across the board, always top notch.
Yeah, they're doing some amazing work there. So I'm so grateful I was able to go see it.
So I guess before we start talk about acting versus creating, have you always been sort of a writer, or have you leaned towards that in your life even before you got involved with theater?
Well, growing up, I started as an actor very early. I was doing like a summer day camp program through the Park District in my hometown. It was like a theater summer day camp, and it was connected to an equity theater. And so I kind of got like plucked out of the camp by the artistic director of the theater. Came to a rehearsal one day, and this was when I was like 10 years old. And she said, hey, we're doing The Secret Garden, and we need someone to play Mary. So I auditioned and I got cast. So that was my first like professional production when I was 10 years old. And from there, I just never stopped. I got an agent from that production. And so then that's when I got my equity card from doing the first national tour of Ragtime. Ragtime came through Chicago and did like a 2-year sit-down production. So I got to play the little girl in that. And so I didn't stop acting. I loved theater, and I did musicals and straight plays, and a little bit of TV. And I do feel like I was always interested in the writing side of things. I was always like I was always an avid reader. I was always like a literature buff, and I'd always be backstage, reading, trying to like devour any book I could. And I started writing. I wrote a bunch of like poems when I was a kid. I loved haikus. And it's interesting now that I think back, like lyrically, like I would say my favorite thing to do is actually write lyrics. And I love the constraint in it. And I think like it's interesting that I loved writing haikus because, you have a certain number of syllables you can use in a haiku. Similarly, when writing lyrics, you have a certain number of syllables you can use often if you're working with, a melody that's already created. So, and I wrote a lot of short stories, little short plays when I was younger. And yeah, so but I didn't start writing like musicals until I started writing Emojiland with Keith. And we both, that was our first, both of our like first musical that we wrote. I would say we actually, throughout the process, wrote like 8 musicals because we wrote 8 different versions. So I do feel like we both really learned how to craft like a musical through that process. And we had some wonderful mentors too. Someone, a really talented TV film writer who also writes books of musicals, read our first draft and invited us over, and he sat us down and he was like, okay, so let me teach you a little bit about storytelling, and gave us some books, actually taught us about like a note card, taking note cards and like how to figure out where things can go to make the story most evocative.
Yeah, almost like storyboarding, I guess, right?
Like storyboard, exactly. It's storyboarding, yes.
Yeah, interesting.
So that was really helpful to us. We read some books. We took some like dialogue courses through that, and and I'm very proud with where the show landed after all the 6 years of writing and rewriting we went through. But yeah, so that was my first foray into writing musicals. Before that, I'd written like some lyrics, but not a full musical or anything. A short musical. Keith and I wrote a 15-minute musical for a little festival back when we were in Chicago.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I mean, since then I've really fallen in love with writing musicals, and being a lyricist is probably my favorite part of the job. It's like it gets me most like excited, and I love writing lyrics. But I love also just crafting a book of a musical as well.
Well, when you're working on I guess either part of that, does having the background in acting help? Because what you're writing and how you can see it on stage because you've been there?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, my process when I write also is to get into character. That's anytime I am writing dialogue or lyrics, like I am fully like transporting, embodying that character. That's always how it works for me.
Excellent. And you're still doing both, right? You're still acting and writing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, my favorite is when the two combine, when I get to perform in something that I have written. That's also really exciting and fun.
Yeah, that's got to be interesting. I always wonder, well, the two questions I have for people who create things like this is, when do you know it's done? Which had to have been...
It's never done. I think Sondheim said that too. Like a musical is never done.
Okay, well, that answers that question.
But I will say, it's done sometimes when it has to be, because you have a deadline of production. Sometimes, I mean, I feel like for Emojiland, that's really what happened, is that, we had this deadline. We actually got accepted into the New York Musical Festival in 2018 with a version of the show that is not what was performed. We actually knew, because we had done a reading of that version in New York, and we knew that it wasn't there yet. The story it just wasn't landing emotionally. There was actually no relationship between Nerdface and Smize in that version. Actually, Smize didn't exist as a character in that version, the one we submitted to the festival. And there was just something missing, and we ended up we got into Nymph, and we had a deadline of maybe 2 months until we were going to put up that Nymph production, and we completely rewrote the show. That's when we wrote Sat on the Inside. We added Smize as a character. We created this whole relationship between Smize and Nerdface, and really put a lot more personal stuff into the show at that point, which I think is what really, in the end, made it much more impactful. But all that to say, then we had this deadline. We were like, okay, so this is the version we're putting up at Nymph. So that ended up being more so the definitive version. But then when we had the deadline for Off-Broadway, we got a theater. We actually only really got Off-Broadway because a theater had a show cancel. So the Duke on 42nd Street, which is where it was off Broadway, they had a cancellation. So they were calling producers they knew who had done shows there in the past and said, hey, do you have a show that's ready for off Broadway? So they called Visceral Entertainment, who they were our general managers for the Nymph production. And they said, do you have a show that's ready? And so they called us and they said, do you think you'd be ready to go off Broadway in 3 months? And we said, yeah,
of course. Yeah.
Sure, of course. Let's do it. Let's do it. So, then we had 3 months we knew there were some more songs. We wanted the Firewall Ball song that opens Act 2, that didn't exist yet. And we knew we wanted a big song to open Act 2 like that. So we wrote that song and a few other, changes we wanted to make to the show. But yeah, when you have a deadline and okay, we're opening on this date, like, the show has to be done. But there's always, even when I see the show now, I'm like, I'd love to tweak that. Or, there's like there's little things that you just, you never quite feel like it's done.
Well, you mentioned how many songs you wrote. So I was wondering, is it harder to determine which songs to cut or if you have to add one because you think there's a gap in the story arc or something like that?
I mean, it's hard to cut. It's hard to cut, and because it's a very emotional process. You get very attached to these songs and these characters, and so some people call it like killing the babies, which is a horrible phrase, but it's like it's hard. It's hard. So I don't know. I think it depends on the writer whether it's harder to cut or add. I don't know. I always get I get excited about adding, I get excited about like, a new song. Ooh, let's like, I think there's it's exciting when something is in the creation phase. But yeah, you have to zoom out and serve the story and the characters. So, it is hard when sometimes, it's like, this is a great song, but this is not moving the plot forward. This is not moving the characters' emotional, life forward.
Yeah, it has to be purposeful, right?
It has to be purposeful. Yeah, you really. And I think that I learned that too because with Miss Hysteria we got to do a workshop with Stephen Schwartz through ASCAP in 2023, and he gave us like some very just valuable feedback and things that I've kept with me. And he was talking about how like you should really look at all the songs in a musical, and ideally you should really never have a song where just one character is singing all by themselves. It should they should be singing to someone, or even there's a part of the song that is sung with someone else, or like, because if someone's just standing there singing, most often it's not moving the story forward.
Yeah.
It's just like a soliloquy, and it's just stopping the story.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm thinking in my head about all the songs that I think people sang by themselves, but they really don't because there's other people singing. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a rhyme that, as a lyricist, a rhyme that you just couldn't make work that was just needling at you for a while?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's the thing about writing lyrics. Sometimes, just literally just crafting one line, like a few syllables, like 3 syllables, 2 syllables can take days, where you just have to sometimes let it go, walk away from it, take a nap, come back. Sometimes, you're vacuuming and it comes to you like that all the time. I'll be like, I'll be doing something completely different and I'll be like, that's it. And then I'll like voice memo it, write it down, send it to, my writing partner and be like, this is what I think I found it. So yeah, no, definitely. I'm trying to think like right off the bat. I remember, I'm trying to think of a specific lyric. Well, I mean, with Emojiland, it's like a lot of the lyrics changed so many times because we kept the music from certain songs, but the lyrics changed because the characters kept changing and the story kept changing. So like the Pile of Poo song, there is a version of the show where Pile of Poo is sung by Father Christmas. and it is a big, like it's like a happy update song, but it's also about Christmas. And anyway, the lyrics were completely different. It's not Pile of Poo. So, there's there's a demo that exists out there that is like the same exact song, but completely different lyrics. So that's just like an interesting, weird thing about this show in particular, that there are so many different lyrics for each song.
Put those all in the deluxe CD version.
Right, exactly.
So when you're creating, or let's use with Keith for example, the Emojiland, when you're creating a song, what's the process like? Is what I'm getting at. So is the melody done first, the music, and then you fill in the lyrics? Do you guys sit in a room together and just bounce a bunch of ideas off each other? How does that work?
I mean, well, it's different. Yeah, every writing partnership is different, and also sometimes every song is different. With Keith, it was always usually music first, and also always starting with a hook. Like, what's the title often? Sometimes the title sparks something. So that is, lyrically, that the title sometimes is the first thing before a melody. But yeah, I would say often it's the chorus. And yeah, but sometimes it's a very like organic process where, the melody shifts because, what if these lyrics, come in here? And I think it's just different. It's different for every song, and it's a kind of a magical process. Sometimes it's hard to, there's no rigorous like format that it follows every time. And I found too with my current writing partner, Ben, when we've been writing like Miss Hysteria, it is often melody first, but also still title first. So like whatever that title is, which often the title then informs like the chorus, usually starting with the chorus before a verse. And but there are certain songs where like Ben and I were at this like writing retreat last year working on Miss Hysteria, and there was a song where I was like, oh, I know exactly what like wants to be said. There was no melody yet, and I was like, let me just write out some lyrics, and then he crafted the melody around that. But it depends.
Yeah.
It depends. Like sometimes, yeah. With Emojiland, it really was always, I would say it was usually music first, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question before we get to Miss Hysteria. I remember seeing an interview with Lin-Manuel Miranda where he was talking about Disney's Encanto. And specifically, we don't talk about Bruno, which was a huge hit.
Yeah.
You didn't think that was going to be the big hit from the movie, and it took him really by surprise. Have you had something like that where you had a song in a show that you thought it's important, it's necessary, but it's maybe not something that's going to be popular, and then it turned out to be bigger than you thought?
Interesting. Let me think. I don't know. I think it's like with Emojiland, it's hard to say because I feel like I don't feel like there's one song from Emojiland that is like, or no, I would say if I had to pick, but this might not be true, but I would think that maybe Zeros and Ones is a favorite. But I think depending on who you are and which character you connect with,
That's true.
Maybe Skull's songs might be your favorite, or or Sad on the Inside if you really connect with Smy's. Anyway, I think tends to be a favorite of people's, but like so you're talking about like sleeper hits.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd be interested. I don't really know like all the data to know like what is the hit song from Emojiland. And I mean, Miss Hysteria has not gone into production yet, so I don't know. Maybe there's a sleeper hit in Miss Hysteria that I don't know about yet.
Well, let's talk about Miss Hysteria because I wanted to bring this up, and you've mentioned it a few times. So this is a new musical. I don't honestly know much about it. I've looked at the website and it looks a little darker than Emojiland. I would, if I'm venturing a guess at that.
Yes, it is. It yeah, it deals with some darker issues, mental health, and takes place in 1885 Paris at an asylum. And it's about an actress who is wrongfully committed to the asylum. And as she's trying to escape and break free, she ends up making a deal with the doctor, with this driven neurologist, Dr. Charcot, who he's trying to make hysteria a thing. He's trying to show the world what hysteria looks like by having his patients perform the symptoms.
Mm.
They can't perform on command, and so he's about to lose his job, and it's all failing. And Louise Glaze, a real person, she says, well, I'm an actress, so I can act hysterical for you in exchange for you setting me free. So they make this deal, and then they set down this path to create this show of sorts. And it's all based on truth. You know, there was this patient, Louise Glaze, who she was very heavily photographed because photography was just beginning during this time. And she was the one who essentially made Dr. Charcot famous for hysteria. And all these women started getting committed for hysteria, which, you know, was sort of this catch-all diagnosis during the time. You know, if you were a woman who had an opinion, if you were a woman who didn't want to get married or have children, or if you were a woman who, you know, was also interested sexually in other women, you know, like, or anything really, reading a book, like, you were hysterical.
Anybody who didn't fit into the subservient box that, you know.
Yes, who didn't fit into the societal box that everyone expected of them. Yeah. But, you know, it is a dark story, but it's also we want it to be entertaining and uplifting as well. And there is some elements of comedy in it as well, sort of like the show that they're trying to put on, because she's a theater person, so she ends up enlisting other patients in figuring out how to put on this show.
Wow, sounds fascinating. And I imagine have you had to go different places with your lyrics here than you've had to before?
Yes, for sure. Yes, definitely drawing from a very deep place. And also, you know, Louise is dealing with a lot of repressed trauma. And she ends up, so Freud is a major character in the musical as well, because he was actually there. He was Dr. Charcot's protege.
Okay.
He had a residency. So he was there at the same time. So all the pieces started, you know, in the researching of it, all the pieces started coming together, and it was like, well, what if Freud and Louise, they were there at the same time and they connected, and they ended up spending time together and talking about dreams, and she has this repressed trauma that he's very fascinated by, and she ends up, you know, inadvertently inspiring him to go on and become the Freud that we know. And yeah, so, you know, Ben, my writing partner, Ben Zedman, who's a fabulous composer and writer, we started having some really, like, deep conversations when we started working on this about our own, you know, traumas from childhood and things that we'd repressed. And and so that really, it's woven into the piece for sure, and it comes from a very real place.
Great. Well, I have to think that you were mentioning earlier in the interview about absorbing books and reading all the time when you were younger. I have to think that enjoying that then probably helps you enjoy the research process, because there's got to be extensive research that you guys put into something like this.
Yes. No, it's true. I like that connection. That makes a lot of sense. I think that's true. Yes. I mean, we've been reading extensively about this time period and what was happening then. And yeah, I enjoy that part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's in development, and on the website, misshysteriamusical.com, you've got your timeline, and are you currently in the New York Theater Barnes New Work series? Is that what's going on now, or are you beyond that?
No, that's coming up. So the next thing we actually have coming up is going to be in September. We're doing an equity reading in the Los Angeles area at Music Theater West. They have like a New Works reading festival. So that'll be in September. And then in October, We're actually, Ben and I are the Dramatists Guild Fellows. They basically sponsor some writers for the year, and we get to meet and talk to mentors and share, get feedback on our scripts. So they're flying us to New York in October for the Dramatists Guild like presentation, and then we'll do also in October the New York Theater Barn New Work Series concert version. So that'll be like a 45-minute concert version of the show. It'll be our musical and one other musical, which also centers around like women and like gender-based violence, and that'll be October 26th.
Okay. I have some friends in New York. I'm going to have to make sure that they head out to see it when it comes there.
Amazing.
So what comes after all of this then? So obviously the goal is to get this onto a stage in a fully, realized production somewhere. How does that process happen? Do your agents go out to producers and try to market the thing? How does that work?
Well, it's a very elusive process, I would say. I mean, I was actually just talking about this yesterday with someone from the Dramatists Guild because, yeah, every musical has a different path. And some musicals are, really gain traction through like TikTok. And that's putting videos out is how, then someone notices it and transfers it. Or like a musical like Be More Chill a few years ago, they really did the social media game really well. That's how they got off Broadway. So yeah, I think it's different. I mean, for us, it was the New York Musical Festival with Emojiland. So sometimes it's these festivals, programs that are really like, an entryway into the system. But really getting a lead producer on board is often like a really important step. Someone who has the connections and can really help shepherd it. So yeah, we're hoping that maybe we meet our lead producer in New York in October. Maybe that's a moment for us. Otherwise, you're just always looking for the right partnerships, the people that get the show. Sometimes it's a regional theater that really wants to foster the show and really help grow it. And maybe that's in a town like Chicago. I'm from Chicago, so Chicago theater that's my roots. So
Yeah.
I'm actually talking to an artistic director in Chicago at a theater that I have worked at a lot in the past that I love, and he's a really big fan supporter of the show. So we're applying for grants to hopefully do a production in Chicago there. So we'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of options. It could be London. We've heard that, maybe launching it on the West End could be great for us. It's a story that does take place in Europe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where it starts.
Could be Seattle. Seattle's had a share of shows that have come out of here.
Absolutely. I would love it. I mean, there's so many great theaters in Seattle. Yeah. That would be fantastic. That'd be a dream.
I'll have to circulate this around to the artistic community and see where it lands. Because I'll tell you what, it sounds like a unique, fascinating story to tell.
Thank you. No, I love Seattle. After visiting this, last week, I love Seattle and the Washington Pacific Northwest area. I mean, it's so beautiful. So honestly, that would be a dream to do it in Seattle. I'd love to come.
Well, you came here at the right time. First of all, the weather's been great.
It's incredible.
The town's buzzing because of the World Cup stuff going on.
Yeah. So it was really exciting.
Yeah. Glad to hear it. So what else, is there anything else in the works beyond this, or is everything sort of laser focused into Miss Hysteria right now?
So Ben and we do a lot of submissions for like Disney and other animated projects. So we're working on some of those. So if we happen to book one of those, that would be awesome. Otherwise, I'm writing a play also with a different writing partner. And I'm very excited about that play. So we actually started writing it as a pilot during COVID. And we got to do a reading of it for the very first time and hear it out loud, because it's kind of just sat in a box for, many years. But we got to hear it out loud a few months ago at a theater, and it really came alive. And everyone came up to us afterwards and they said, "This is a play."
Nice.
So, okay. So it's a very, it's an intimate show. It's like 5 people, and it's a juicy story. So anyway, I'm excited about this play, and we're in the process. We're about halfway at the halfway mark in the writing. So yeah, so working on this play also, I'm very excited about.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back on and talk about that too, and maybe even again when Miss Hysteria gets on Broadway.
Oh my goodness, your mouth. I hope so.
So how can people keep up to date on all of these projects that you're working on? I mentioned the MissHysteriaMusical.com website. You have your own website, I think, right?
I do, yeah. Well, I'm the Lil Laura. So on like Instagram, I'm at the Lil Laura and thelillaura.com. And yeah, I think that's the best place.
Okay, and we'll put those links in the show notes so people can find them. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this. Emojiland was great. I'm sure Miss Hysteria is going to be good. I mean, it sounds great, and can't wait to hear more about the play.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be connected with you. And really, I also just want to say again that I really am grateful for your truly thoughtful review. And yeah, thank you for seeing. Thank you for seeing us. It's a strong prescription.
And thank you for reaching out. It's not every day that I get to speak with someone at a creative level, producing shows like you are with that kind of quality. So I really do appreciate that. My guest has been Laura Schein. I'm Greg Heilman, and this has been Behind the Curtain with the Sound on Stage. We'll be linking Laura's contact information and social media in the show notes. And I'd like to thank you, Laura, for taking the time. I'd like to thank everyone out there for watching us and supporting us here at the Sound on Stage. And until next time, I will see you at the stage door.
Thank you so much. Thanks for supporting live theater.